Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be tackling the always fascinating world of relationships. Buckle up, because I found some seriously interesting stuff while researching for today that I can't wait to dig into.
Oh, yeah, relationships. Always a good topic for discussion. I'm sure we will all learn something new today.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's get right to it. One of the things that really caught my eye was this whole idea of how quickly we form first impressions. Like you meet someone new and boom, in just a few minutes, your brain has already kind of sized them up. It's crazy how fast that happens. The source I was looking at said it takes something like 90 seconds to 4 minutes, which isn't much time at all.
Yeah, it is pretty wild when you think about it. Like our brains are working overtime in those first few moments, taking in all sorts of information. It's not just about physical appearance either. There's body language, voice tone, all those subtle cues that we might not even be aware of. Our brains are trying to figure out if this person is someone we can trust, if they're a potential threat, all that instinctual stuff.
It's like we've got this internal radar system constantly scanning for danger and opportunity. I guess makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. But yeah, it definitely makes those first encounters a little more nerve-wracking, knowing that so much is happening beneath the surface.
Totally. I mean, we like to think we're in control, but a lot of it is subconscious. Those gut feelings we get about people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So first impressions, they're important. But here's where things get even more interesting. Apparently, couples who've been together for a long time, they start to mirror each other, like their mannerisms, their speech patterns, even their looks.
Oh, yeah, you see that all the time. It's like they become more and more alike as the years go by.
The source called it emotional contagion, which I thought was a pretty cool term.
Yeah.
Basically, couples kind of sync up their systems over time.
It's not just about spending a lot of time together either. There's a deeper level of empathy and understanding that develops. You start to feel what your partner's feeling.
Yeah, you pick up on their habits, their ways of thinking. It's kind of sweet when you think about it, like a testament to the bond you've created.
Absolutely. It's like creating your own little world together with its own language and customs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about first impressions and this whole mirroring thing. Now let's tackle something that's a little bit more, maybe a little bit scary. The 7-year itch. Is it real or is it just a myth?
The 7-year itch. It's definitely one of those relationship concepts that gets a lot of attention.
So what's the verdict? Is there any truth to it?
Well, the good news is it's not some kind of relationship death sentence.
Yeah.
It's not like every couple hits the 7-year mark and suddenly everything falls apart. But research does suggest that relationships often face their biggest challenges somewhere between years 5 and 8.
So it's not just a random number. There's actually something significant about that time frame.
Exactly. It often coincides with major life transitions, careers getting more serious, maybe starting a family, financial pressures mounting, all that stuff. And the initial excitement of a new relationship has probably worn off by then. So couples are faced with the challenge of adapting to these changes while still maintaining their connection.
Makes sense. It's like you're entering a new phase of the relationship and you have to figure out how to navigate it together.
Exactly. And for some couples, it can be a real make or break point. But here's the thing. The couples who make it through that phase often come out stronger on the other side.
So it's not necessarily about wanting to run off with someone new. It's more about facing those inevitable life challenges as a team and figuring out how to adapt and evolve together.
Exactly. It's about weathering the storm together and coming out stronger as a result.
Okay, so the 7-year itch, not a guaranteed relationship killer, but definitely something to be aware of and prepared for. Now let's debunk another popular myth. The idea that opposites attract. Is there any truth to that, or is it just a recipe for disaster?
Well, opposites might attract initially. There's something exciting about someone who's different from you. But when it comes to long-term relationship success, similarities seem to be a much stronger predictor.
So finding someone who shares your core values, your interests, your outlook on life, that's actually more important than finding your polar opposite.
Exactly. Think about it. It's much easier to build a life together when you're on the same page about the big things, family finances, future goals. If you're constantly butting heads on those core beliefs, it's going to create a lot of friction in the long run.
Makes perfect sense. All right, time to address the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the smartphone in everyone's pocket. How does all this texting affect our relationships?
Yes, the age-old debate. Is technology bringing us closer or driving us apart?
Right, because on one hand, it's great to be able to stay connected with your partner throughout the day. Send a quick text, check in, see how they're doing.
Absolutely. And for couples who are in long-distance relationships, texting can be a lifeline. It helps them feel close even when they're physically apart.
But I also wonder if all that digital communication is preventing us from having those deeper, more meaningful conversations.
That's a valid concern. Texting is great for quick updates and sharing funny memes, but it's not always the best way to handle serious issues.
Right. It's so easy for things to get lost in translation without the nuances of tone of voice and facial expressions.
Exactly. If there's a real conflict that needs to be addressed, face-to-face communication is still the gold standard. Being fully present with each other, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. So it's all about finding the right balance. Using technology to stay connected, but also recognizing its limitations and making sure we're still having those important conversations in person.
I think that's a great point. It's about being mindful of how we're using technology and making sure it's enhancing our relationships, not hindering them.
All right, let's move on to something a little lighter. Pet names. Are they just cute and fluffy, or is there something more to them?
You might be surprised to learn that pet names are actually linked to greater relationship satisfaction and happiness.
Really? So all those honey bunches and sweethearts are more than just silly terms of endearment.
Exactly. They create a sense of intimacy and a special connection that's unique to the couple. It's like a secret language that reinforces their bond and sets them apart from the outside world.
It's like building a little world just for the two of you, filled with inside jokes and special expressions of affection.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even small gestures can have a big impact on how we feel in our relationships.
I love that. So there you have it, folks. Pet names. They're not just cute. They're actually good for your relationship.
Welcome back to our deep dive into relationships.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already about those first impressions and those long-term changes that happen, but there's so much more to unpack. I was really intrigued by this idea that vulnerability can actually be a strength in relationships. Kind of seems counterintuitive, We usually think about being strong as like putting up a wall and not letting people see our weaknesses.
Right. It can definitely feel risky to let our guard down, especially in romantic relationships where the stakes are high.
So why is vulnerability so important then, if it makes us feel so exposed?
Well, think about it. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone, you're essentially saying, hey, I trust you enough to see the real me. And when your partner reciprocates that vulnerability, it creates a deeper level of intimacy and understanding.
Okay, so it's about building trust and allowing yourself to be truly seen by your partner, warts and all.
Exactly. And that kind of authenticity is what allows for real connection. It's like you're saying, I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to let you see all of me.
And hopefully they'll accept you for who you are, flaws and all.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about something a little more concrete. The source I was looking at mentioned something called the magic ratio for relationship success.
The magic ratio. What's that all about?
So it's this idea that there's an ideal balance of positive and negative interactions in a healthy relationship.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, disagreements are going to happen.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about making sure the good outweighs the bad.
So what's the magic ratio? How much positive do we need to balance out the negative?
Well, according to research by Dr. John Gottman, it's 5 to 1.
5 to 1. Okay, so for every negative interaction, like a disagreement or a hurtful comment,
you need at least 5 positive interactions to counterbalance it.
That's interesting. So what are some examples of those positive interactions?
It could be anything from compliments and words of affirmation to acts of service, spending quality time together, physical touch, and, all those things that make your partner feel loved and appreciated.
Okay, so it's about consistently depositing positive energy into the emotional bank account of the relationship.
Exactly. It's those small, everyday acts of kindness and love that really add up over time.
Makes sense. All right, let's dive into the fascinating world of brain chemistry for a moment. The source highlighted how falling in love triggers a cascade of chemicals in our brains. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, all those feel-good hormones.
Ah, yes, the chemistry of love. It's a powerful cocktail.
But I've also heard that these same chemicals are released during other activities, like gambling or drug use.
That's true. The same neural pathways that light up when we're falling in love can also be activated by other pleasurable or rewarding experiences.
So love is kind of like an addiction then.
Well, in a way, yes. It's not exactly the same thing, of course, but those intense feelings of euphoria and attachment are definitely driven by our brain chemistry.
Interesting. So it's not just emotion. It's a complex interplay of biology and psychology.
Exactly. And understanding those biological underpinnings can help us navigate the ups and downs of love with a little more insight and compassion.
I like that. Okay, let's bring it back down to earth and talk about some practical tips for strengthening relationships. The source emphasized the importance of spending time apart, which again seems kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that couples who want to be strong would spend as much time together as possible.
Right. But here's the thing. When you spend all your time with someone, you can start to lose sight of your own individuality. It's important to maintain your own hobbies, interests, and social circles outside of the relationship.
So it's about finding that balance between togetherness and independence.
Exactly. You need both to have a healthy relationship. You want to be able to come back together as individuals who are also part of a strong couple.
Makes sense. It's like that saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Maybe the challenge of being apart makes couples appreciate each other even more when they are together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something that couples can do together to strengthen their bond. Traveling.
Oh yeah, traveling together can be such a great way to create memories and deepen your connection.
Absolutely. When you're exploring new places, trying new things, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone together.
And you have to rely on each other more. You're navigating unfamiliar territory, which can be a really bonding experience.
Plus, you're creating all these shared memories that you can look back on and laugh about for years to come.
Exactly. It's like injecting a dose of adventure and spontaneity into the relationship.
And speaking of connection, let's talk about the importance of physical touch. It's something that often gets overlooked, but it's crucial for a healthy relationship.
It's true. We often think of physical touch in terms of sex, but it's so much more than that.
Right? It's about those everyday gestures of affection, holding hands, cuddling on the couch, a quick kiss, hello or goodbye.
Those small acts of physical touch release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone.
Exactly. It creates a sense of closeness, security, and well-being.
It's like a nonverbal way of saying, I love you and I care about you.
Precisely. And don't underestimate the power of a simple hug. Hugs can be incredibly healing and reassuring.
All right, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about something that can be a bit of a taboo topic, money. How does money affect relationships?
Oh, money is a big one. It's one of the most common sources of conflict in relationships.
Yeah, I can see why money is tied to so many aspects of our lives. It can be a source of stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. And when couples have different values or approaches to money, it can create a lot of tension.
So it's not just about having enough money. It's about being on the same page about how you manage it, spend it, and save it.
Exactly. Open and honest communication about finances is crucial for a healthy relationship.
So it's about creating a shared vision for your financial future and working together as a team to achieve your goals.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that financial situations can change over time. What worked for you financially in the early days of your relationship might not be sustainable as your lives evolve.
Right. Okay, let's move on to a topic that's a bit more lighthearted. Gift giving. Is there a right way and a wrong way to give gifts in a relationship?
Well, gift giving can be a wonderful way to express love and appreciation, but it can also be a source of stress if it's not done thoughtfully.
I've definitely been on the receiving end of some well-intentioned but not so great gifts in the past.
I think we all have. The key is to be mindful of your partner's love language and to give gifts that are truly meaningful to them.
So it's not about how much money you spend, it's about the thought and effort you put into it.
Exactly. You want to show your partner that you really know and appreciate them.
And sometimes the best gifts aren't material possessions at all. It could be an experience you share together, a handwritten letter expressing your feelings, or simply a day set aside to do something special for your partner.
Right. It's about making your partner feel seen, loved, and appreciated. And that can be done in so many different ways.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into all things relationships.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've talked about everything from first impressions to the chemistry of love to those everyday things that make relationships tick. So as we wrap things up, I'm curious, what are some of the key takeaways that really stood out to you?
Well, one thing that really resonated with me was this idea that relationships are constantly evolving.
Right. It's not like you reach some sort of finish line and then everything's smooth sailing from there on out.
Exactly. It takes effort and attention and a willingness to adapt and grow alongside your partner.
And to keep those lines of communication open.
Absolutely. We talked about how important communication is, and it's not just about talking. It's about really listening and understanding your partner's perspective.
And be willing to compromise.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about the importance of shared experiences and laughter.
Absolutely. Whether it's traveling together, trying new things, or just sharing a silly joke, those moments of joy and connection really do make a difference.
It's about creating those positive memories that you can look back on and cherish.
We also debunked some common relationship myths along the way. Like the idea that opposites attract.
Right.
Yeah.
Turns out similarities are actually more important for long-term compatibility.
We also talked about long-distance relationships and how distance doesn't have to be a deal breaker.
It's all about intentionality and putting in the effort to stay connected.
And let's not forget the power of vulnerability.
It's about allowing yourself to be seen and accepted for who you truly are.
So at the end of the day, what makes a relationship thrive? It's the little things.
The everyday gestures of kindness, the shared laughter, the willingness to be vulnerable, and the ongoing effort to nurture that connection.
It's like tending a garden. Relationships require constant care and attention.
But the rewards are well worth it.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about relationships.
Just kidding. There's always more to learn.
That's true. But I do hope our listeners feel inspired and empowered to create relationships that are truly fulfilling.
Remember, relationships are a journey, not a destination.
Well said. All right, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of relationships. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep those hearts open.